The Australian Parliament has passed laws making it possible to punish human rights abusers and corrupt officials who do not face justice in their home countries. The Autonomous Sanctions Amendment Bill is partly based on laws first passed in the United States in response to a death in custody in Russia more than a decade ago. Sergei Magnitsky was a tax auditor in Moscow who uncovered the alleged theft of hundreds of millions of dollars by tax officials. He was arrested in 2008, accused of collusion, and was repeatedly beaten and denied medical care before his death at the age of 37. The US became the first country to pass a law in his name, banning the entry of Russian officials believed to be responsible for his death and freezing their assets. Similar laws have passed elsewhere, including in the United Kingdom, where they were recently used to punish Saudi citizens accused of being involved in the murder of Jamal Khashoggi. The legislation has received bipartisan support, although Labor is critical of how long it has taken, declaring Australia an outlier among democracies. Australia is going a step further than any other country to target cyber hackers and violations against children during war. Simon Henderson from Save the Children joins us now to talk through the implications of the legislation. Thank you very much for joining us. The bill was passed in a rare display of bipartisanship. Talk us through why you believe it is important for vulnerable children wherever they are in the world.
Well, these new laws that have passed are really significant in what they say about Australia's commitment to upholding international humanitarian law and international human rights law. While Australia already had an autonomous sanctions regime, it needed a substantial overhaul. They were outdated, they weren't fit for purpose, and they didn't go nearly far enough to hold perpetrators of abuse to account, including those who are involved in grave violations against children. So what this new legislation provides the Australian government is an opportunity to respond to those significant violations committed by states, non-state actors, individuals and entities to ensure that they're held accountable and also that there's a deterrence effect for grave violations against children globally.
Save the Children had argued for an amendment to the legislation. Did it get through? Did you succeed?
Yes, we were really pleased to see that an amendment was included to ensure that serious violations of international humanitarian law ended up being in the bill. That was critical to ensure that it would be successful. Under the original language, we may have missed out on ensuring that grave violations against children, such as attacks on children or recruitment of children, might not be able to be sanctioned. For example, we know in Yemen in the last 5 years, more than 460 schools have been attacked, many caught in crossfire. Schools are being damaged. They're used as collective shelters for displaced families or occupied by armed groups. And the situation regarding the recruitment of children has only become more serious since the pandemic. During the pandemic, the number of armed groups or forces recruiting children has risen. Many children have been left without their caregivers, out of school, and are facing high risk of violations. So the ability to have an option to sanction grave violations of international humanitarian law in Save the Children's view was essential to ensure that the Magnitsky law would deliver on its promises.
Australia is catching up to other countries with similar legislation. Are you able to detail for us circumstances where other countries' laws have undoubtedly made a difference to a child's life?
Certainly. So we've seen legislation that's been introduced in the UK, in the US, in Canada, the European Union, in multiple contexts all over the globe. A really good example of a situation where sanctions were imposed was, again, coming back to Yemen. In December last year, the US sanctioned a former head of the National Security Bureau, Abdul Rahab Jaffan. He was involved in the detention and ill treatment of humanitarian workers and actions that led to the denial of humanitarian assistance. And so Save the Children wants to ensure that there will be appropriate means to hold people who are denying access to humanitarian assistance accountable. That provides mechanisms such as stopping access to financial markets, stopping access to bank transfers, and ensuring that they're not able to set foot on Australian soil or potentially the soil of Australia's like-minded partners as well.
How soon do you think the Australian government could declare sanctions under these new laws?
Well, we're hopeful that the government will be using the sanctions laws soon. There's a really an opportunity to take advantage of the legislation now. There will be regulations that need to be introduced accompanying the Act, and they will come through in the new year. But civil society is very much ready to work collaboratively with the government. We have been doing that throughout the course of the parliamentary inquiry, working with all political parties, appearing at hearings, preparing submissions, and ensuring that the model that is developed in Australia works for government. We have staff on the ground working in more than 120 countries. We understand the local context, and we can make sure that the appropriate responses are made when sanctions are imposed. So we're very ready and willing to work with the government on these new laws.
Just finally, the regulations you mentioned that are yet to come, would they be concerning how and who decides sanctions will be imposed?
Yes, the regulations provide more detail about the type of conduct that would be sanctionable and the processes of how sanctions would be imposed. So that includes issues such as how serious human rights violations incorporated under the legislation. And they also provide further information and could potentially provide further detail about how civil society can work collaboratively with government in respect of implementing these sanctions.